Well, I'm down. I'm down for sure. How are we, chat? Chat, we good? Are we live? Yo, chat. What's up, Michael? Yo, Ellie. What's up? Ellie, you good? I'm good, I'm good. I'm just trying to do a live stream right now. Just trying to do a live stream. I was just talking one like yesterday, but just waiting for people to join up. Mainly on YouTube, because the YouTube audience tends to be more interactive and also, you know, just trying to see what people want to talk about today. I wanted to add my camera to the TikTok, but TikTok thing isn't really allowing it because I think since my first time, what do I call it? This is my first time live streaming on TikTok. There's a lot of restrictions, so hopefully, like after this live stream is done, I should be able to do more on TikTok. But mainly on the YouTube thing. How are you? Oh, I swear you've been working. Yo, David, you're in chat, man, on the YouTube chat. Yeah, I flip burgers like SpongeBob. Yeah, that's a WLE. Yo, how you doing, man? Another another person in YouTube chat as well. What's up? I'm good, David. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, what's life saying though, man? Just talking stream today. Just doing a just talking stream. I'm chilling, David. I'm chilling. I am chilling. Yeah, that should be fine. There's the Yo, David, is there anything you want to talk about today in particular? You as well, Ali. Anything you guys want to talk about? That's fast, David. What the hell? Yo, chat, how we doing? How we doing? The hell is going on? You've been working fast, bro. Look, you want to see what you think about that new boss thing, and if I'm the only one who thinks it's a bad thing. What do you mean by the boss thing, Ali? Explain. What do you mean by the boss thing? Yo, whoever just joined the YouTube chat, how you doing, man? What do you mean by the boss thing, if I may ask? Teenagers get it for free now. I think I heard about something like that. And if I'm the only one, what makes you think it's a bad thing? What makes you think it's a bad thing, Ellie? What makes you think it's a bad thing? Because I've been on the buses and I can't lie, I've been really annoying. That doesn't make it a bad thing, though. That's just teenagers being teenagers. If you get what I mean. No, David. Basically, what is there's a the government introduced a new scheme that's been making buses a lot cheaper for teens. And Ellie was just saying that she finds it annoying, you know. But yeah, Ellie, that doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing there. Just because teenagers can't teenagers are being annoying or young people are being annoying. I mean, free buses are not young people are gonna be annoying anyway or act immature. You know, I still that doesn't make it a bad thing. So what makes you think it's a bad thing? David, you still in chat? David, what do you mean by they could have done that? He said What do you say? Could have done that sooner. Yeah, it could have. They could have for sure. They definitely could have. Well, it depends as well, because you have to think about like the government only really care when the government subsidizes stuff. They're trying to think about like returns when it comes to like long term investments and all. So I don't know. It's not a complex issue necessarily, but it is like a how do I say it? It's not one that's simple anyway. But the government's always whenever the government invests in something, the government's always thinking about like returns on investment, or trying to see a return on investment. Yo, Glad, what's up, man? Glad 4.0. Yo, keep joining chat, guys. Thank you, man. I appreciate you saying it's fascinating. That means a lot. Just trying to do a just talking stream. See what people are talking about. Right now, we're talking about the new government bus scheme that's making it cheaper for young people to be on buses. So yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that, or would you like to talk about anything else? I don't mind personally. I don't personally mind at all. See, yeah, that's a good question, Davostic. That's a really, really good question. So for the TikTok chat, Davostic just asked, how can the UK balance its industrial history and economic growth with the urgent need to protect nature today? Which is a really good question. Hold on. Let me just type that in for the TikTok chat. You're my favorite YouTuber. Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you. Davostic, just stay in chat. I'm gonna type up your answer for the TikTok chat. How can the UK how can the UK balance how can the UK balance its industrial history, economic growth with urgent need to protect nature today? You see, that's a really good question because, like, historically, the UK, especially if you look back at like the Industrial Revolution and all, historically, the UK has like pursued a policy of trying to grow as fast as possible, which which has affected not just nature but like the average, human being. So like during the Industrial Revolution, the UK kind of exploited that, and because of that, it impacted a lot of people. Because of what was I saying? Because of how like rapidly like the UK industrialized, it actually harmed a lot of people. For example, when the British first started industrializing, it displaced a lot of people from the countryside because they didn't need as many people to help with agriculture. So obviously, there's no jobs for them in the countryside. So people started moving to the cities. The problem was the cities weren't built to handle that many people yet. So that there weren't enough homes, there weren't enough jobs. Sanitation was poor, so like there's a lot of hygiene issues. So that meant that stuff like disease, and unemployment and crime was extremely high because of how like rapidly we did it, right? Because industrializing and advancing technology in itself is not a bad thing. It's actually really, really beneficial for society. The issue with industrialization, okay, and economic growth is when it's too much, too fast. People need a transition time, right? Yes, introduce new technologies, but that doesn't mean like you abandon all the people that were reliant on like the old way of life. You give them a transition time or transition period into the new technology. And if you look at like right now what's going on in the world, especially with the rise of AI, yes, historically speaking, every time a new technology comes, it gets rid of old jobs, but also it makes new ones as well. What people are failing to recognize is that if you don't give enough if you don't give people enough time to be able to adjust to that new technology, or at least for those new jobs to be able to appear, then it doesn't really help people. And he just said maybe we can try to either plateau with mass production right now, or might try to make stuff sustain. The thing is, the UK doesn't really produce in the modern day and age as much, because like during the 1970s and 80s, the UK started to industrialize. I think yeah, YouTube. You guys can see the TikTok chart. I put it on the screen. But the UK doesn't produce. The UK, at least the UK doesn't produce physical goods anymore. The UK produces what the UK produces is financial and technological. Like we import our oil for energy. We don't use the coal as much, but technically we import stuff like coal. We import a lot of our food. We produce around 60% of our food, but the other 40% is the stuff that we can't grow here or is way cheaper to buy from abroad, like wheat or bananas or sugar, stuff that can't be grown here or is way cheaper to make abroad. We import that as well. So the UK isn't so much a producer anymore. The issue with the UK is more so stuff like the work life balance and making sure that workers are properly compensated, for like the work they're doing. And I think yeah, that's the key issue because if you look at if you look at what people are earning, for example, in the 1980s, there's a big difference in purchasing power. So now, for anybody that doesn't understand what purchasing power is, basically, purchasing power is how much money, right? How much stuff your money can buy you, in simple terms, right? So somebody in the UK might be earning £1,000 a month. Somebody in a country like Zimbabwe might be earning £1,000 a month. But what £1,000 will get you in the UK is different to what £1,000 will get you in Zimbabwe, for example. So same thing back in the 1980s, the pound could buy you more when it comes to value than it does now. For example, during the 1980s and stuff, a Freddos, a small chocolate bar, would cost you maybe 25p, for example, or even 10p. Now that same chocolate bar might cost you 50, if not £1. So, but the problem issue with that is, um, income hasn't adjusted at the same level. For example, during the 1980s, people might earn £2 an hour, but that £2 will stretch them further than, let's say, and now in this day and age, we earn £12 an hour, £14 an hour, but that £2 an hour will stretch you further and get you more stuff than the £14 does today. And that has a big impact on life because obviously, like in the news and media, we call it, cost of living. Cost of living. That's why it's important not to purely look at stuff and be like, oh, your high cafe. Ellie just said, but the issue is that maybe it could lead to hyperinflation if we just adjust pay too quickly. The thing, how to explain hyperinflation? No, how to adjusting pay in itself doesn't lead to inflation. What leads to inflation is demand and the amount of currency in circulation. For example, the more notes the government prints, the less value it is. Why? Because there's more pounds. But at the same time, the more in demand goods and services are in pounds, because that's what people don't understand. If because the UK and the pound is such a widely used currency and it's highly in demand, that gives the currency value. But like when how do I say it? When supply surpasses demand, it doesn't just impact goods and services, but also impacts the currency. So the thing with raising prices is that when you raise no, no, not raise the price. When you raise the wage, like let's say minimum wage, for example, the wage increase in itself does not cause inflation. What causes inflation is how companies respond to it, right? So if I own a store, for example, right? If I own a store and and people in my neighborhood have just gone a wage increase, because they've gone that wage increase, they can buy more. And because I know we can buy more, I raise my prices. Like people don't have to raise their prices; they choose to. Why? Because it'll make them more money, and that's what causes. At least that's one of the causes of inflation. Of course, there's other causes of inflation, or other causes of the prices of goods and services rising, but that's just one of the reasons. So raising wages in itself isn't a bad thing. Of course, if you raise it too much, yes, it's bad. It makes stuff more expensive for companies and all. But the issue with raising wages is that we haven't raised wages in proportion to inflation. And that's what's causing everything to be more expensive in this day and age. Because okay, if let me see if I can search up a graph. How have wages increased in proportion to inflation? I don't know if they show me a graph, but I'm just gonna see what Google says. Since the 60s, inflation to cost cost of living. Okay, so Google says median wages, so median is the average wages have roughly matched or slightly exceeded general consumer inflation since the 60s, because government technically they adjust stuff for inflation. But they have failed to keep pace with the actual cost of living due to the hyperinflation of major essential assets such as housing, healthcare, and education. So yes, if you compare it to inflation, wages have increased. But if you compare it to what stuff actually costs day to day, wages haven't increased in proportion. Somebody in the 1980s might earn, let's say, £20,000 a year. Somebody now might earn £40,000 a year. So on paper, that's 100% increase over the course of 40 years. But houses back then were, let's say, let's say a 3 bedroom house, 3 bedroom family house back in the 80s might cost you, let's say, £30,000, £40,000. Now that same 3 bedroom house will cost you 200,000. So wages have increased since the 80s by 100%, but then the cost of houses has increased by what that be 400%, 500%. So if I earned £20,000 back then, it's easier for me to buy a house then than it is now, even though wages have technically increased because the wages haven't increased in proportion to inflation. If they had increased in proportion to inflation, the average person should be making now over £100,000 a year, but they're not. The average wage is around 30 to 40,000, not 100,000. I think it's even more than 100,000, but that's just to show you how cost of living affects people because the wages don't increase in proportion to essentials. So stuff like Wages haven't increased enough in proportion to houses. Wages haven't increased enough in proportion to cars. Wages haven't increased enough in proportion to food. We don't feel it as much in this country because we are even even though we're going through some tough times right now, we are still a prosperous country. So that's why yes, our pockets feel pinched more, but we're still surviving. No one's starving to death. People, of course, there's a lot of people going hungry, unfortunately, but nobody's actually really starving like that. Thankfully. Now there may come a day if we don't fix this issue where people are facing going through genuine hunger. Like in a lot of other countries, inflation or some people do go hungry, and thankfully we don't face that in the UK. Even though some people do struggle to find a meal, unfortunately, but it just means that the cost of living and the cost of like daily essentials or just life essentials is increasing more than the cost of increasing more than our average wage actually is, if that makes sense. I hope that answered your question, Divostic, if you're still in chat. Keep bringing questions, keep bringing questions. It'd be good to hear your thoughts about it as well, Ellie. YouTube chat. Any other things you want to talk about? I don't mind personally. We can keep talking about like the economy or literally any other topic. I don't mind. YouTube chat. Ellie just said, "What's your thoughts on like youth unemployment and how bad it's actually getting?" I think youth unemployment isn't is an issue that the government isn't in general taking seriously enough. Seriously enough, sorry, in my opinion. And I say that because okay, look around you. Most of the people your age. 70% of jobs, first of all, I like to get that out of the way. 70% of jobs aren't filled from applications. They're filled from who you know. So, okay, a friend recommended me. My father recommended me. My uncle recommended me. A co-worker recommended me. Or an acquaintance recommended me. Whoever it is, most jobs are filled by who you know. So, aka networking. That's the proper word for it. They're filled through networking. The issue with that is most people don't have connections, right? How are you meant to get an easy job in law if none of the people you personally know are lawyers, right? Or a job in healthcare. Healthcare isn't it doesn't affect the health industry as much or the healthcare industry as much, like NHS and stuff as much because the NHS is always desperate for workers. So regardless of whether you have a connection or not, you're getting a job for the NHS. But stuff like law, stuff like accounting, stuff like finance, it doesn't just affect the intellectual jobs or the uni level jobs. It also affects common jobs as well. You know, people used to joke that I never want to work at McDonald's. McDonald's is a low level job. Okay, but now you go to apply for McDonald's, and even McDonald's will reject you because the demand for jobs is far exceeding the supply for jobs, and that's the issue. Because technically speaking, if there are fewer workers and more jobs than workers, jobs will pay people more to encourage people to work at that business. But because there's a lot more workers than there are jobs, it causes a disparity. Because technically, purposes, there's not enough jobs for people. I know Ellie, I know you talk about youth unemployment, but youth unemployment ties into unemployment as a whole. And something that's really important to note is that the official, and I say that specifically, the official unemployment rate is around 3%, 3 to 5%. I don't know the specifics. I can search it up now if you guys want. But the official, what is the official unemployment rate? Okay, the official unemployment rate is 4.9%. So that means officially, according to the government, 5% of adults are unemployed. Now, before I break it down more, even by itself, that 5% number is a very bad number. Because think about it, okay, if we have, I don't know, we have 69 million people in this country, and we can probably say 40 million plus people, yeah, 40 million plus people are adults. Probably even more, but let's just say 40. Okay, let me be specific. 40, let's say 40 million plus people are working age adults, because obviously people that are retired are contributing to the economy. Generally speaking, people that are below 18 aren't really contributing, even though some may have jobs, most of them aren't really contributing to the economy. So let's say working age adults around 40 plus million people. If 5% of those people are unemployed, that means, okay, if you do, that means around 2 million plus people are unemployed. Oh, 2 million plus adults are unemployed. So first of all, where are those 2 million adults going to get assistance from? Now, some of that might be because they can't find a job. Some might not be able to get a job, maybe for medical reasons, or mental health reasons. Of course, in that number, there's going to be a lot of legitimate cases where people can't work. But there's also going to be a lot of people that, unfortunately, they have to survive off the government pension, off the government benefit system because they can't find a job, which is a very unfortunate thing. But even that 5% figure, as bad as it sounds, that isn't even the full picture, because the government, how do I say it? The unemployment figures aren't showing the full picture, because it's important to know what the government calls employment and unemployment. For example, let's say I'm a rich person. I have £1 million in my bank account. Because I have £1 million in my bank account, the government is calls me employed. Even though I don't have a job, I'm not self-employed technically. The government calls me employed. Why? Because I have so much money that I don't need to work, but I'm still gonna be spending. So the government calls me employed. So that just adds on to the unemployment figure. Because technically speaking, when most of us think of the word unemployment, we think somebody that's staying at home doing nothing, don't have any work to do. But because some people are so rich or have enough money that they don't need to work, it's fine. These governments will cause them employed, which fair enough. That isn't the main thing that distorts the figures. Even though that would probably increase the figure by maybe like 1%, so it'd probably be 5.9%. The real thing that doesn't show the full picture of unemployment is that the government calls even partial employment. I could work 1 day a week. 1 day a week isn't enough to support yourself. Only way you can support yourself on 1 day a week is if like you're a uni student and you're getting student finance, or if you're living with your parents. And even then, you're not really supporting yourself. It's just extra money, and you're not, homeless or going hungry. But the only way to survive working 1 day a week or 2 days a week is to have external support. That's just a factual. That's just factual. Whether it's parents, whether it's the government, regardless of who it is, regardless of who it is, government cause. How what was I going to say? Unless you have external support, you can't survive on like 1 day working 1 day a week or 2 days a week. But the government still calls those people employed. So whether if you're full time employed, the government calls you employed. If you have enough money that you don't need to work, the government calls you employed. If you're partially employed, so in partial employment, the government calls you employed. If you have seasonal work, and this is the key one, if I'm a person that Okay, when winter comes around, okay, and obviously some companies have seasonal work, right? So when winter comes around, when winter comes around, some companies might say, "Oh, we need some Christmas season workers, or we need some summer season workers," right? Let's say for that seasonal work, I'm employed for 1 month. So for that 1 month, okay, I'm actually working a full-time job. After that month, if I don't do any work for the rest of the year, the government will still call me employed. So think about that. So if you're too rich to work, if you're so rich you don't have to work, your government calls you employed. If you do seasonal work, the government calls you employed. If you do part-time work, the government calls you employed. So that, you know 4.9% figure isn't actually as accurate as it may seem. I don't know if that answers your question, but when it comes to youth unemployment in particular, the government doesn't seem to care. I was at a political thing about a couple of weeks ago, and w- we were actually talking about employment. There's a local MP, his name was Chaka Adam, and he was saying that, oh, what ways can we help young people, you know, to find work? And I was going to suggest that, oh, we actually need to make proper jobs for young people. But I realized, okay, he's an MP, he can't really do that much by himself. But the key thing that they try to say is a good way to get young people jobs. They said it's right, or giving young people, transport money or something like that, transport money to be able to go to other cities or whatever, where there's jobs or go for work experience. But you see, this is my key issue with this country. We never make a permanent solution to anything. Or at least we don't make permanent solutions to most things. So let me not say anything. We don't make permanent solutions to most things. So, and because of that, okay, every time there's a problem, rather than targeting the root issue of the problem, we kind of like give it band-aids. Or when there's unemployment, oh, okay, we might subsidize a couple of businesses, rather than targeting the root issue that companies aren't actually making enough jobs and companies aren't actually paying people enough to really support themselves financially. So it's a very big issue, I'd say, when it comes to unemployment and all. It's something that this country like really needs to fix on. But yeah, so if I had to give one specific answer to answer your question, I'd say that the government doesn't provide permanent solutions to problems. It just like plasters them. Youth like employment aside, if you look at like the government complains all the time that, oh, people don't have enough children. So, okay, so they introduced the child benefit. If you actually look at what the child benefit is, that's nowhere near enough to be able to support an actual family. I'm sure we can all agree on that. £20 a week for what? People, there's certain people on the right wing in particular that'll be like, oh, people are gonna have children just so they can leech benefits of them, or leech child benefit of them. Even if you had 10 children and leech child benefits of every single one of them, it's not enough to support yourself and them. So that's just a myth in the first place, and people just want to do that to be able to insult and discredit the poor. And even if you look at what of how much the benefit system takes from like the budget, it's such a negligible amount. But there's a lot of stuff people don't want to talk about. So people always complain that, oh, taxes are eating. The government raises taxes all the time, and no good. How do I say it? The government increases taxes all the times, and or why isn't stuff like improving, for example? When nobody actually stops to look at what the government spends the money on. The media and the government and people on social media like to blame immigrants. They like to blame people that seek benefits. They like to blame a lot of things, but nobody wants to take accountability and blame some of the key issues. For example, the pension system takes in a lot of the country's money, and people don't realize that because fundamentally the UK is an aging country. It doesn't seem like it's aging so much because we're bringing in a lot of young immigrants. A lot of okay. If you look around in school, even if some people grew up here, a lot of people weren't actually born here. So There's young immigrants in schools. There's young immigrants, in the workforce. And that's why it seems like the country isn't aging as much because we bring in a lot of immigration, especially when it comes to young people, that kind of mitigates the effects of an aging society. For example, if you look at countries like Japan or China, for example, they don't bring in as many immigrants, and their societies are also aging, and you can see how that's impacting them. That's why a lot of those like societies like China and Japan, they're really pushing for automation and machines a lot because they don't have the people to produce, so they have to give that job to machines to produce. Like we always look at China and think, oh, they have 1.3 billion people. China has 1.4 billion people. So because of that, China was that's why China's able to produce all they do. And whilst that is a factor, the fact is that China is an aging society. Japan is the most rapidly currently the world's most rapidly aging society. The birth rate is dropping. South Korea rapidly aging, terrible birth rate. So if you want to understand how the UK and how the USA and how France would be if you want bringing in immigrants, just look at the Eastern society. You know, Ellie just asked for the YouTube chat. Ellie just asked, is the dependency ratio going to become a problem? Absolutely. I can tell you for a fact that the dependency is not just going to become a problem. It already is a problem, but it's going to become an even more serious problem. And let me tell you a key fact that a lot of people don't realize about the pension system. When the pension system was established, because what people don't understand about national insurance is that national when you pay national insurance, you're not paying for your future pension. That's what a lot of people don't understand. You're not paying for your future pension. You're paying for the pensions of the people that are currently retired. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. You're paying for the pensions of people that are currently retired. When the pension system was established in 1948 by the Labour government, the dependency ratio, so dependency for people that don't understand, the dependency ratio is how many workers are there for each retired person. So in 1948, when the pension system was established, for every 10 workers, there's one retiree. And that's very sustainable, right? So for every one person that's retired, 10 people will be paying into their pension. Easy to pay into. Now, in the modern day, the dependency ratio is for every three workers, there's one retiree. That's why, as time goes on, it's going to just keep scaling. By 2040, 2050, 2060, that'll be for every two workers, there's one retiree. And think about that. In a country currently okay, we have 69 million people, right? We have 69 million people in this country. If for every three workers there's one retiree, presume that maybe around 40 million people are of working age. And bear in mind, not all the people that are of working age, this is important to note, not all the people that are of working age or how do I say it, are working anyways. But 40 million working age people, and then let's say you divide that number by three, you have maybe might be closer to say maybe 30 something million working people. Divide that number by three, that's 10 to 15 million retired people. In the future, okay, the UK population is still going to keep growing because were bringing in immigration. But in that future, that dependency ratio is going to be worse. So a lot of the gains from increased taxes are being swallowed up by the pension system, right? Yes, the government increases taxes by 1%, right? The government may increase taxes in like income tax by 1% or corporation tax by 1 or 2%. But whatever financial gains the government has from that is immediately swallowed up by the pension system. Why? Because the UK is aging. And the UK is aging because people in the UK aren't having enough children, right? Now, there is one key thing to understand about like people that have children. There's a big difference between the amount of children people want to have and the amount of children people end up having, right? Now, if for most people that end up having children, they have two or three children, right? The issue is all the people that don't end up having children, or they or the people that end up reluctantly having even one child. Because the main cause, if you ask people, what's the main reason why you don't want children? There's very few people that say they don't want children because they dislike children. There's very few people that say, "Oh, I don't want children because I just want to be free in life, right? Not to say it's uncommon. That's probably like around maybe 10 to 20% of people that don't have children just genuinely don't want children. And you know what? Fair enough. And that isn't what is making the UK age. What's making the UK age is all the people that want to have children but feel that they can't afford to have the children, Because most people don't want to raise children in poverty, Everybody says, oh, I'm not getting married, I'm not having children until I'm satisfied with my financial position, which is fair, That's a very sustainable life to live. The issue is a lot of people will never or will struggle to reach that point. That's why at some point, as people enter the late 20s and late 30s, even if they're not a millionaire, even if they're not rich, you know, people are like, okay, I found the person I love. Okay, even though my finances aren't where I want them to be, I'm financially stable. I'll have children, and that's where most people end up. Most people aren't actually happy with their finances. They're just satisfied. Oh, I'm financially stable. Oh, okay, I consistently bring in so and so income. My partner brings in this amount of income. So we're in the position where we can have children, and we're not necessarily going to be in poverty. That's where most people end up having children. So until the government ignoring inflation, sorry, if we ignore inflation for a second, that's inflation. I meant immigration. If we ignore immigration for a second, until the government actually makes having children a viable financial option for most people, will never actually solve the aging crisis, and we're just mitigating it by bringing in young workers. So there's not enough jobs, there's not enough apprenticeships. Since 2017, the amount of apprenticeships in the country has dropped by around 30%. So jobs are going down, apprenticeships are going down, graduate jobs are going down, the price of houses is going up, the price of cars are going up, the price of everyday goods and services like fuel, food, bills are going up. Wages are wages are going up, but they're only going up in proportion to inflation. They're not really going up in themselves. So how are people actually meant to live? That's why I said that we're lucky the UK is a prosperous country where, despite how bad the country is going, or despite the negative direction the country is going, we still are still able to live happy lives. There's a lot of countries where if they're in our shoes, but with their economies, they wouldn't be able to manage. So yeah, unemployment and the aging population is going to be a real issue in the future. It's an issue now, but will become an extreme issue in the future. So yeah, how are we YouTube chat? I know Ellie's still on the live. I saw one person join TikTok live and I'm listening for a bit, but that's fine. How are we YouTube chat? How are we Ellie? Just talking history, politics, and all. What's up YouTube chat? What's up YouTube chat? We good? We good? TikTok chat is just Ellie right now, but that's fine. Is that open or what's up TikTok chat? What's up YouTube? What's up YouTube? That's fine. Anything you guys want to talk about, I'm down. I'm down. Ellie just said TikTok chat. Luke got a tumbleweed. Yeah, there've been a couple of people that have been in and out of the TikTok chat, but most people just come and go. I think part of that was I think when I first started the live stream, because there's no one to talk to, there wasn't really active for that. Since then, people come and gone. There's one person that stayed stuck around for a little while. I noticed that, but also on YouTube chat, not really responsive as much. They were responsive for a bit there, but not so much right now. or my streams gonna be every day. I'm going to try and do them regularly, but they definitely won't be every day. I was meant to release a TikTok video today on my Indian Perspectives accounts on TikTok, Instagram, but I never got around to it, and I didn't want to delay the stream too much. So, but yeah, the streams won't be every day, but I'll try and make them as regular as possible. No, I was meant to edit it, but I never actually got around to editing it because how do I say it? What's the YouTube chat saying? Yeah. Oh, David just asked, "What have you read this year that changed your perspective on something?" Um, well, the thing with me is that I don't really read books as much as I should. I read a lot, but I don't really read books. So a lot of what I read is like Wikipedia articles, on like the on like economies, so like stuff like I might search up like okay, UK Wikipedia, and then I'll go down to the economy section and just read about the economy. I don't know why I find stuff like that interesting, or I might read about like demographics, for example. So I do read a lot. Something I've read this year that's really been interesting. Um, this wasn't so much to do reading, but I did read about how you know political party donations work, particularly in the USA, how political party donations work. And it's very interesting to see how, the PAC system works. So basically the PAC system is just how people donate money to political parties in the USA. And it's very interesting to like search the websites where people track what donations receive, what politicians receive, what donations from different places. So like, there's a lot of American politicians that people know about AirPac, which is AirPac is basically Israel sending money to US senators and US politicians to influence decision making, which is quite interesting. There's similar stuff in the UK as well, but it doesn't. I say it doesn't happen as much in the UK. Or at least in the UK, there's more restrictions on who can donate to politicians. But if you have time, I say it's a very good idea to just read on. Okay, where does the Labour Party get their donations from? Where does the Conservative Party get their donations from? Where does Reform, for example, get their donations from? For example, lately there's been there was a scandal where people discovered that Nigel Farage he was donating like millions from, was it a right wing businessman or something like that? So and Reform in general, a lot of the, not just Reform, but a lot of the right I can't speak today. Right right wing parties in Europe actually get their donations from Russia, for example. So it's quite interesting. I'd say that's something interesting to read about. Thank you for asking me that, David. But yeah, a lot of people just coming and going out of the YouTube chat and TikTok chat. Well, that's fine. It's all just a process. It's all just a process. No, it's not. It's not effective. Not because boycotting a brand in itself is a bad thing. Boycotting, the reason why boycotting brands doesn't work is because not everyone is doing that, and that's another thing people don't understand. You can boycott Tesco or Lidl or Greg's or McDonald's all you want, you know, but if everybody isn't doing it with you, it means nothing, right? Boycotting is a good thing, I'd say. It's good to hold brands accountable and make sure they're doing like the duty to society or not. But you have to get everybody, or at least a significant amount of people on board with you. Otherwise, boycotting that brand will do nothing. You know, if I started boycotting Tesco, that's fine. If I think Tesco is doing something wrong, I boycott them. If a significant amount of people aren't doing the same, boycotting Tesco does absolutely nothing because overall the income is fine. You need to hurt them financially for them to actually push stuff. Because companies, at least the majority of companies, don't do stuff because they morally feel it's right. They do stuff because it benefits them either short term or long term financially. You know, so if you boycotting them, or if a large group of people boycott them because over one certain policy, they'll change that policy to satisfy that amount of people or that group of people. Why? Because companies want to prioritize their profits, and if a policy is hurting their profits, they'll either change the policy completely or adjust it to make people happier. So overall, I say in the way modern society boycotts people, I say boycotting doesn't work. On YouTube chat, David just asked, and this is something as well. Why has food bank usage surged rapidly in the UK? I'm not saying it's a disadvantage, but couldn't it kind of affect the economy or people? Let me just that's a very good question again, David. You've been asking a lot of good questions, David. You too, Ellie. Let me just copy that into how do I say it? The TikTok chat, because I think that's a really, really good question. David the Vostik on YouTube just asked. Oh, it doesn't let me copy. Oh, that's a shame. Okay, that works. That works. Anyway, back to yeah, that was a really good question. Let me just answer that now. Why has food bank usage surged so rapidly in the UK? I'm not saying it's a disadvantage, but couldn't it kind of affect the economy or people? It doesn't affect the economy, but it does affect people a lot. And I say that because food bank usage and people seeking, donations or whatever is a symptom of the way the economy is. And it goes to show how much the cost of living and the economy is really affecting people. People getting food and feedbacks in itself is not affecting the economy. However, the economy is affecting people, leading to them going to get feedbacks or going to get food or clothing from get food from food banks or clothing from charity shops, for example. You know, obviously, yes, going to charity shop, you can get some cheap stuff there, but the vast majority of people won't do that unless they're desperate. Of course, there's a lot of people that just want to get some cheap stuff, and no, that will always be like that. But fundamentally, a lot of this stuff is symptom of the economy that we're in. People aren't what rather than food banks affecting people. Oh yeah, earlier just said I don't think it's too negative because a lot of the stuff stops it from going to waste. The issue isn't what's being donated and so much people getting food in itself. The issue is why people are going to get the food donations, right? I think that there always be unless we radically change society. I think there'll always be a society where people need some sort of benefits or some sort of food donations from food banks, for example. The issue is when the amount of people that need stuff from food banks increases to like an extreme amount or to a significant amount, something wrong, something bad is going on, or something is going wrong in the economy. You know, for even if somebody is extremely poor or you know they're suffering from poverty a lot, most people, whether it's pride or just they want to be self-sufficient, most people want to support themselves. Even if somebody only earns £1,000 a month, most people want to be able to support themselves, and having to go to donations isn't something most people want to do. So the fact that a lot of people feel like they have to go to get like food bank donations or donations from whatever else just goes to show you like the way the economy is going and the way cost of living is going. It's so easy to forget in the UK that there's a lot of poor people out there, and I know I said before that people in the UK aren't starving to death, and which is true, but a large part of that is because people help each other out in the UK. It's so easy to forget that because the UK is one of the largest economies in the world and is a fairly prosperous country, that there's a lot of people that are really struggling out there. You know, and thankfully, most people in the UK are part of the middle class, so they aren't necessarily living paycheck to paycheck. But there are a lot of people that are living paycheck to paycheck. Now, in the UK, during the 80s and 90s, because the economy was booming, thanks to the oil boom and discovery of natural gas and oil in the North Sea, the UK economy was really booming. And when they started bringing in the financial sector and stuff, the economy was booming. So the amount of people going from being in the working class to middle class was changing significantly. Now, in recent years in particular, that trend has reversed a lot, and I'd say a lot of the problems in this country, or a lot of the problems in this country became visible. The problems were already there, but the problems became visible because of government austerity. And a lot of the austerity was very necessary because the government was simply spending more money than they had. So yes, people were spending good on people, but at the same time, um, yes, they were spending good on people, but at the same time, they're also putting a lot of debt to fund that because we weren't bringing in enough money in proportion to what we were spending. But when austerity is taken to extreme lengths, it leads to a drop in the quality of life for a lot of people and also the quality of services, not just businesses provide, but also the government provides. So if I use the example of the police, for example, since extreme austerity began in like 2017, the amount of police officers has dropped significantly. The amount of libraries or the school budgets, whatever, has dropped significantly. And because of that, how do I say it? Because of that, the quality of life for a lot of people has gone down. If you go to a lot of UK cities, the amount of events is going down. The amount of stuff for young people to do that's cheap or even free is going down. And because we as young people don't know how life was before we were born, it's hard for us to complain. You can't complain about what you don't know. So if you don't know how good the parent generation had it or the grandparent generation had it, it's hard for us to complain unless like you talk to them about it, or you see like video footage of like how life was in the 1980s for young people, or how life was in the 1990s for young people. It's very hard for us to be able to complain about stuff, but in general, the economy is like really pushing a lot of people to the brink, and it's an issue that, I said before, the government really needs to combat. In the TikTok chat, Ellie just said, could you argue with the way that the cost of living economy is going, whereas almost recession? It's not almost recession like Ellie. It's not almost recession like it is a recession. The UK is in a recession, and it's been in a recession since like 2021, 2020, 2021. Obviously, 2020 that's because of COVID, but even since then, the UK economy isn't actually growing. The reason why it doesn't seem like the UK is going down in terms of economy, or at least the reason why it seems that the UK economy is growing is because of the financial sector. Take the financial sector out of the UK economy, and the whole economy just goes down. The whole that's the financial sector and the banking sector, because the UK is a major financial hub, a major global financial hub. London, in particular, and the financial sector, because basically every major law firm, every major bank firm, uh, every major company that has a headquarters in the UK or has a regional, whether it's proper headquarters, primary headquarters, or regional headquarters in the UK, they basically all have them in London. London and the financial sector are holding up the UK economy by themselves. And that's a large part of that is because so much of the economy is just concentrated in London. Also because, as I said, the financial sector. You look at basically every other sector of the economy is just going down. It's either going down, it's either let me not say going down. It's either in decline because that's the proper term. It's either in decline or is stagnating. Now I couldn't give you specific sectors, but stuff like manufacturing, stuff like the service industry, you know, even if they're not actually declining, they are stagnating. So the UK economy is in a recession. It's just that it doesn't seem like it because the financial sector is carrying the UK economy. So the UK is what predicted to grow by 2 to 3% this year. I show you all of that 2 to 3% of growth is just either in the AI industry or financial industry. AI is not hitting us hard in the UK, for example, because a lot of the AI companies don't have like their headquarters and their servers in the UK. They're mainly situated in the USA. That's why the USA is benefiting more from AI companies more than the UK does. But AI is gonna, let's say, artificially boost a lot of Western economies, I'll say. So mainly for the UK specifically, it's the financial sector, but in general for Western economies like the USA, UK, France, Germany, whatever, is the AI industry and artificial intelligence industry. Stuff like OpenAI. They're booming. Chat GPT. Gemini, because Google as a company is already booming, but Gemini is booming. And even with the AI industry as well, it's not really growing. Like a lot of the AI companies are not making money off AI. It's like they're investing in it as a long term investment. It's like I think there's a term called the AI bubble. So in economics, when we say there's a bubble is when something is artificially high. For example, like if we look at the housing market, we use it, if we have something called the housing bubble. So the housing bubble is when the prices the oh, I can't speak to that. The price of houses is artificially more inflating than it should be. Because demand far exceeds supply. Same thing for the AI bubble. Demand demand quote unquote far exceeds supply. But in the case of AI, people aren't actually using AI that much. So companies are taking a financial loss. So yeah, companies are taking a financial loss in AI because the general public isn't really using AI as much as they should be, or as much as companies would want them to be to make AI profitable. So companies and the investors keep pumping money, tons and tons of money into the AI bubble, because they believe that one day the AI industry will be booming and will make them a lot of profit. So they keep pumping money into it to artificially keep it alive. If they were to stop pumping as much money into it as they have been, the AI industry will completely collapse because right now it's not self sufficient. It's not forget profitable. It's not self sufficient right now. So that's the economy. Yeah, to summarize what I was saying, the UK economy is in recession. It's not going to be. It is in recession. It's just a lot of stuff is artificially keeping it up. I hope that answered the question. Also, whoever just joined the TikTok chat, I hope you're enjoying it. We're just doing a just talking stream today on TikTok on YouTube. Any topic, unless you can see some topics on the screen, but any topics you want to talk about, or you know, we can even do like co-hosting. I don't mind really, but any topics people want to talk about, I can explain it to them, or we can talk about and debate. I'm fully up for it. If you want, we can even like watch some YouTube videos, and then you guys can get my reaction on different political stuff. And then we can pause, we can debate together, or talk about it together. You have any stuff you want me to react to? We don't just have to sit here and talk. Um, if you guys want me to just like react to any TikTok clips or YouTube clips, I'm fully up for it. Even Instagram clips, whatever it is, I'm fully up for it. We're just doing like a just talking stream, a chill stream. What's up YouTube chat? What's up TikTok chat? How we doing? How we doing? Ellie just asked on TikTok chat. Ellie just asked, in terms of politics, how do you feel about the idea of there being reform and restore party, considering they have similar ideas? Now, I read about the restore party. They're both right wing parties, but restore is particularly extreme, at least in comparison to the reform parties. P- Personally, I don't like to align myself with the political compass. So, basically, for those that don't understand, the political compass is basically on the political compass, depending what political compass you're talking about, you have ideology and you have economics. Those are the main two, right? And depending on where you're on the political compass, that's where we get the terms left leaning or right leaning. So I'd say socially, I'm quite a left leaning person. Economically, I'm more in the middle. But that's for when it comes to politics and all. I say, although I don't like to give the political compass a lot because I personally believe that limiting yourself to, oh, I'm on the left or I'm on the right limits how good you can, you know, how do I say, how good you can make decisions. and how good you can apply yourself to decision making and thinking. So that's why I don't like to. I believe that a truly educated person and a truly learned person would is capable of and shouldn't limit themselves to the political compass and should be able to think outside of the political compass. But if I had to pick somewhere I am on the political compass, I'd say that my views, whether it's economically or socially, do tend to lean to the left. I say I'm on the moderate left, not on the extreme left. But when it comes to parties like Reform, I believe well, the thing with Reform and Restore, because although like Restore is more extreme, the political policies go for all intents and purposes like hand in hand. Most of the people, okay, when it comes to Reform voters, for example, because that is the more bigger and more popular of the two parties currently. When it comes to Reform voters, oh my life. When it comes to Reform voters, there's two types of Reform voters. There's the Reform voters that are there because of immigration, and there's the Reform voters that are there because they hate the current political establishment. Now, the most famous of those ones, of those two, are the ones are the first option. The people that are there for the immigration, and I'd argue that isn't the majority of the people. Because okay, if you look at with the Reform's political policy, for example, if you take immigration out and just look at the rest of Reform's um political policies, they're terrible. You know, if you ignore immigration, just look at all the rest of Reform's political policies. They're literally so terrible. Like they'll literally wreck the country. Like they want to partially privatize the NHS. They want to cut taxes for the rich in particular. They want to cut corporation taxes. A lot of the stuff they want to do to this country would genuinely ruin the country. And even if they provide some benefits in the short term, they're just short term. Reforms policies are what I'd call short termist. And short termist means that okay, as the name implies, it's just policies and decision making that's only thinking in the immediate future. Like 1 to 4 to 5 years down the line. Not many of the policies, if any, are long term. So thinking 10, 20 years down the line, for future generations, or even more down the line for future generations. A lot of their policies are very curated or designed to just be targeting short term stuff. So like short term benefits, okay, we're gonna cut the tax for everybody, but they're not actually solving the key issues that this country, I'd say, is facing. So that's why I would say I disagree with Reform a lot. And yeah, as Eddie was just saying, yeah, they have a lot of similar ideas. And what they're planning for this country is good. Or another thing they're saying, and okay, I just explained the first type of reform voter. I just explained the first type of reform voter where they're just purely focused on immigration. But the second type that a lot of people don't realize, and these are the type of people that, despite me being on the left, I have sympathy for this second type of reform voter. The second type of reform voter is just people that are tired of the current system. They don't necessarily want to vote for reform in itself. You know, they know that reforms of policies or the policies that want to do with immigration are terrible for the country, but they're so tired of politicians that didn't actually help the country or change the country that it's kind of like they're choosing reform, kind of like they're treating reform like a nuclear option, right? So their idea is that okay, this country is so bad that we might as well vote some bad people in because we've been voting bad people in. So their idea is that okay, we're gonna vote reform in. Okay, yes, to wreck the country, but to wreck it so badly that the country can rebirth and become new. That's the idea. Like their idea is that okay, we've been voting or bringing in people that are useless, that haven't brought any you know, positive policies in that even though reform are just as bad, if not worse, we might as well vote for them just so they can wreck the system. And maybe once they wreck the system, we can get something that's finally better. So it's kind of like reform is a nuclear option. And I think that's the issue as well, because a lot of people, I even go as far to say majority of people increasingly have lost faith in the political system, and it's so unfortunate. In the last general election, only 60% of people that could vote voted. Think about that. So 6 out of every 10 people that are legally allowed to vote in this country chose to go and vote in the general election. That means whoever comes to power doesn't actually represent the whole country or the opinions of everybody in the UK, because that means if 60% of people want to vote, that means 40% of people either disagreed. Okay, because most people didn't they want, how do I explain it? For the 40% that don't choose to vote, it's not, for most of them at least, because there are still people that just generally don't care about who comes to power or don't are that bothered about who comes to power. But for the vast majority of people that choose not to vote, they're choosing not to vote because they feel like the politicians that are on charge don't actually care about them. And that's the key thing that a lot of people don't realize. Hi, Johnny. A lot of people don't realize that most of the people that choose not to vote in elections don't choose not to vote because they feel like the politicians that are in power don't actually, care about them, or don't, or that they feel as if that no matter who they vote for, no matter who they vote for, how do I explain it? No matter who they vote for, it won't lead to somebody actually changing stuff. You know. Now, if somebody was to come out and show a good track record and show that they actually want to change the country and economy, and and the public or general public actually saw them as like a genuine person that actually wants to fix the country, I assure you, in this day and age in particular, that person will gain tons upon tons of votes, and that's just honest because people are losing faith in the political system, and that's just the truth. Ignoring the general election, if we go back 10 years to the Brexit referendum, that was the Brexit referendum was the highest turnout for any UK vote in history. Think about that. The Brexit referendum, yes, it was a major decision, but that was the highest turnout for people wanting to vote in the UK, and that was 80%, which means 20% of people still didn't go to vote, despite that being a literal, once in a lifetime, life changing, nation changing decision for the country. So if such a big referendum, big vote like that only get 80% of people, what makes you think that the general election will get more people, especially people are losing faith in the system? And it's really unfortunate that people feel forced people feel like they have to, be in this box. If you look at people going around interviewing a lot of reform voters, most of them at least claim, whether that's what they actually mean or not, whether they'll be fully honest or not, who knows. But most of them say they're only against illegal immigrants. So at least on paper, a good chunk of reform voters are fine with immigration, they just don't want illegals. Now, whether they're being honest or not, because a lot of people they're gonna lie for the camera, because if they just say they're against immigration, they'll just seem like really unreasonable people. I mean, they seem unreasonable to a lot of people anyway, but like they seem basically crazy if you just say, "Oh, I'm against all immigration," because generally speaking, people that are against all immigration, they aren't really against it for political economic reasons. Generally speaking, they discriminate against actual legal immigrants because they just don't like people that are of other races or other colors. But Ellie, you just said especially with the fast past the post system, it doesn't seem fair. The way the first past the post system works is, okay. The first past the post system is designed to keep radical parties out, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. It's not designed to be completely fair. It's designed to keep radical parties out. Why? Because whoever gets the most votes gets power fundamentally, right? In the last general election, in the 2024 general election, Reform got, I think, around, was it 15% of the vote? 10 to 15% of the vote. But despite getting 10 to 15% of the vote, they only got about 1 to 2% of the seats, right? Because the issue with how Reform is going is that whilst they got a lot of votes, they didn't get, they won a lot of counties where they got the majority of votes, right? Well, not counties, they won a lot of voting um counties specifically. I don't know what the proper term is. They won a lot of voting counties where, no, Oh, that's the word. They won a lot of constituencies where they got majority voting. The lot of constituencies where they came second or third, but there weren't a lot of constituencies where they got the majority vote. So that's why Reform ended up with, was it just a couple of seats in Parliament, despite getting I think around 15% of the vote. But the lot of there was a lot of constituencies where they got second place. So they came close to getting the seat, but they didn't. So if they had won those constituencies, they would probably. I still don't think they would have won the election because they weren't as popular then as they are around now. Even now, their popularity was fluctuating. I think they peaked in early 2026, but back then, 2024, I don't think they were popular enough to win, even if they won all those constituencies where they got like second place or third place. I don't think it would have been enough for them to actually be able to run the country. But now they are getting more votes overall. Reform is bad, and reform restore is even worse. But if you look at some of the right wing parties abroad, they make reform and restore look like child's play. Like AFD, the in Germany, the AFD, right. I can't speak today. The right wing party, and the German, I think it's the German intelligence service that said that they classified them, the AFD, which is a right wing party in the USA. They classified them as like a terrorist organization, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. So there's some right wing parties out there that are way crazier than the UK. But Ellie just asked, yeah, but like I don't think 326 seats should be a win. I know it's hard to get exactly right, but like you get me. When you say 326 seats shouldn't be a win, what do you mean by that? As in like you've okay, I think you're talking about the threshold to win. But when you say 326 seats, do you mean that it should be easier to win, so the threshold should be lower, or do you mean it should be higher? Because the reason 326 is a threshold is because 326 is what you need for a majority in parliament. It should be higher. Okay, yeah, because okay, it wouldn't make sense for it to be lower anyway. But yeah, I think that's an interesting political point because in most general elections, I think okay, I see what you mean by first past the post now. Okay, because I thought you meant that how it literally works. But yeah, I see what you mean by first past the post now. Because first past the post, yeah. I agree with you. I agree with you. Because first past the post isn't really I see what you're getting at, Ellie. First past the post isn't really fully representative of the UK population. Because the way first past the post is, because like whoever gets just the most votes gets the power. Technically speaking, there's never, at least majority of the time, parties aren't actually supported by majority or at least a significant amount of the British population. So it's not really representative of everybody. Like if you look at the referendum vote to leave the EU, was it 2015, 2016, something like that? If you look at that referendum vote, 52% of people that voted to leave. 48%, you know, 52% voted to leave, 48% voted to stay. So even if it's the technical majority, think about that. 48% of people are basically forced to stay in a country where their views were basically sidelined. And then, okay, that in that referendum, okay, it's either you vote yes, you vote no. So that's not as simple. If you look at like general elections, for example, if a party gets in and let's say a party gets 40% of the vote, for example, a party gets 40% of the vote, what of the other 60% of people that didn't vote for them, or even if a party that gets 6% of the vote gets into power, what of all the other 40% of people that didn't vote for them? Either way, a large amount of people aren't actually aren't actually having somebody in power that they approve of, or you know they at least approve of, or they're okay with. Now, there's another voting system. I don't remember what it's called, but basically the way the voting system works is that I think it's the German system. Let me just search it up. But basically, the voting system I'm thinking about, the way the voting system I'm thinking about works is that um what was I gonna say? The way the voting system I think that I'm thinking about works is that David sent me his roses. The way the voting system I'm thinking about works. I keep repeating the other thing. I keep getting lost in thought. The way the voting system that I'm thinking about works is that there's multiple rounds of voting. Okay, so okay, round one, everybody. Okay, so people pick is it? I think it's two or three candidates, proportional representation, something like that. But it's not proportional representation. The UK has proportional representation anyway. What is the voting system that has multiple rounds so people get the overall most desired candidate? Thank you very much, David. I appreciate it. Okay, STV, that's the system. I think it's STV. Hold on. Okay, it's not STV, sorry, that's Scottish. It's called ranked choice voting. So basically the way it works is that okay, round one of the voting, people will vote pick who the first candidate is. So whoever you prefer to be in power the most, you put them in first place. Whoever you prefer to be in power second, you put them in second place. And I think in some countries, or uh, you can have a third or fourth round or whatever. But at the bare minimum, you have your first pick and your second pick. Now, after the first round, they tally up all the people that had what do you call it? The first round. So okay, they tally up, okay, all the first round votes or all the first pick votes for Labour, or all the first pick votes for Conservatives, all the first pick votes for Reform. And then then whoever has the least amount of first pick votes gets eliminated. And then all the people that voted that lowest candidate as their first, you then take their second preference, and then you add their second preference to all the candidates. And you keep repeating that until by the end of it, you're down to the final two, and then whoever has the most overall votes gets into power. So whilst that system isn't perfect, I think it's way better than the first past the post system, because even if your primary candidate, or even if the person that you want to be in power most um doesn't get into power, doesn't get in, doesn't get in, your second candidate or your second most preferred candidate might get in. So even if your first most preferred candidate isn't in power, at least you still have somebody that is prime minister or is president or whatever that you still like. So I think that's a way better um voting system. The reason why the voting system doesn't change in the UK is there isn't enough willpower for people to change the voting system, unfortunately. Right? I think ranked choice voting or preferential voting is a much better, more representative political system, because even it still allows people to at least be satisfied with the person that's in power. But the issue with the UK is that there isn't enough political willpower for a lot of these changes. Like I think in 2019, the government did a vote on whether they should change how the voting system works. So they ask people, or do you want to keep the first past the post system, or do you want to get the ranked choice voting? Let me search up what year that was. When did the UK do a vote on whether people want the voting system changed? I think it was quite recently, no? No, sorry. 2011. I thought it was 2019. 2011 United Kingdom alternative voting referendum. So if I just move the TikTok chat out the way. Okay. Registered voter turnout. See that this is what I'm talking about. Okay. No, look at what I'm talking about. The UK they did a referendum called the alternative vote referendum. 32% of people that voted said yes, they want the voting system to change. 67%, no pun intended, 67% of people that voted said no. But that isn't the main issue for me, right? Because people have the right to choose whether they say yes or no. That's not the issue. The issue is that only 40%, 42% of people voted. Only 42% of people that could or can vote chose to vote. So even if 67% of people that voted said no, or 68% of people that voted said no, 60% of people didn't vote on it. So whether that's because we didn't know that the referendum was going on, or whether it's because we don't care about the voting system, or they have no preference or care about what voting system we have, 60% of people didn't vote. So regardless of the outcome of that referendum, it doesn't actually represent the UK. Am I right or wrong? You know, it's not really representative of what the UK should be or what people in the UK actually want. Now, I imagine even though there's a lot of people that may not care that much, I think a part of that 42% figure is because a lot of politicians or whoever was in power at the time, what does it say? It occurred Accord is the provision of the Conservative Liberal Democrat coalition agreement. So, from the sounds of it, there's a fair chance that they just did it as a whim. The Conservatives probably did it as a whim just to satisfy their coalition with the Liberal Democrats. Because the Conservatives, they didn't gain on a majority by themselves. So they had to form a coalition, a parliamentary coalition with the Liberal Democrats so they can actually be in power. But clearly, apart from people just not caring, the referendum probably wasn't advertised as much as it should have been, so people can come and care about it. Like Brexit, even though 20% of people still didn't vote, Brexit was highly advertised. That's why 80% of people did come out to vote. This 42%, that doesn't really represent what the UK is. So yeah, very complex issue, I'd say. What's up, YouTube chat? I see there's a few people in there. What's up? What's up? We good? We're just doing a just talking stream for whoever's just coming or whoever's coming back. We're still doing a just talking stream. So yeah. Hope you guys are enjoying. We've been talking for a good while now. Some of the topics we've talked about the political system. We've talked about unemployment. We've talked about some of the other stuff we talked about. If you can scroll up, okay, okay, um, okay. David asked why my perspective. He asked about food banks and charities. He asked about financial markets. We also talked about what dependency ratio, the UK dependency ratio. So literally anything you guys want us to talk about, want us to debate, or if you want to see my reaction to a TikTok clip, Instagram clip, or YouTube video, we can watch it together, react together. I'm down for anything. We're doing similar streams yesterday. I just talking stream, just a chill one. I'll see what you guys want. See another person join. What's up? What's up? Anything you guys want to talk about? Because I'm fully down for anything. In the meantime, whilst you guys are thinking about stuff we can talk about or react to, early today I was just watching the Agent 00 video about with superhuman AI, and and whilst you guys are thinking about that stuff, I think it's quite interesting to see how AI is progressing, how AI is like replacing a lot of human jobs, and it doesn't seem that bad right now because AI is on advanced enough to do a lot of tasks. But as time goes on, AI will really take a lot of like you know repetitive jobs. Or put this food in this cardboard. AI will take that job for sure. Oh, put this rubbish in this bin. AI will take that job. There's a lot of jobs, especially when it comes to jobs that don't need a lot of critical thinking, that just need to be done. AI will be taking a lot of those jobs, and I can assure you when I say that because it's just way cheaper to not have to hire a human. On TikTok, Ellie just said in terms of AI, do you think there's a way we can use it that isn't as harmful as it currently is? For sure, there's a way we can use it, but it needs to be restricted and it needs to be regulated. And the issue is that we haven't been regulating it. And that's why we're seeing it harming people. It's already harming people and it will harm people more because we aren't regulating it. If I use an example, in China, for example, a company used AI, brought in AI, and because of that, they fired a lot of their workers. And because of that, that's when, let me repeat myself. In China, a company, they fired a lot of their workers to bring in AI because AI, you don't have to feed it, you don't have to pay it, you know. So it's just way cheaper and allows the company to make more profits. Then the government stepped in, and I think it turned into a court issue because the government's basically saying that whilst companies in China are allowed to use AI to make their business more efficient, you know, and make the business flow better, and more, yeah, make it more efficient, make their businesses more efficient and make their businesses flow better. The government said it's illegal for AI to replace workers. And whilst I think there's good about it, I say overall that was a very, very good decision for the Chinese government to make because when, yes, use AI to make your products or your business more efficient, but AI shouldn't, in my opinion, be brought to a point where, or it's making life harder for human beings because it's replacing jobs. Because where are these human beings just meant to go? Especially, as I said before, for those who weren't here around before, especially because of how cooked the job market is anyway. If AI is taking jobs from people, bear in mind the amount of jobs is already limited. Where are people meant to go to support themselves? You know, people need money to support themselves and need jobs to get the money. But AI is taking those jobs, where they're going to get the money, you know? So if we're going to allow AI to keep doing what it's doing and keep progressing how it's doing, unless you want people to start starving to death and be in extreme poverty, the government is going to have to start giving people money to be able to support themselves. So either you give people money to support yourselves in the future, or you start regulating how AI works. So I think that's a issue that really needs to be combated. I think this is on the topic of AI. There's probably some stuff we could do with, like AI and stuff. If I go to YouTube, I'm sure we could probably all like watch YouTube videos together. I think TikTok may allow it. It should allow it. I don't think they have copyright stuff on TikTok. What's up to the few people in chat right now? Rise of, yeah. Let's see if we can record, watch this stuff together. Okay, yeah, this is a good video I think we can watch. Persica. AI. Humanity's final evolution. I think that's a good video we can watch together.
Humans rule Earth without competition.
YouTube chat, can we hear that? Can we hear the video? And TikTok, can we hear the video as well? I think this is a very interesting topic. Let me test it out for TikTok chat.
Humans rule Earth without competition. But we're about to create something.
Okay, Ellie, you can hear the. I think YouTube chat should be able to hear it as well. Let me just check OBS to see if YouTube can hear it.
That may change that. Our last invention, the most powerful.
Let's just.
Humans rule Earth without competition. But we're about to create something that may change that. Our last invention, the most powerful tool, weapon, or maybe even entity, artificial superintelligence. This sounds like science fiction, so let's start at the beginning. Intelligence is the ability to learn, reason, acquire knowledge and skills, and use them to solve problems.
And on that note, the reason why AI isn't as harmful as it will be in the future is because AI isn't at a high level yet. And I think within the next 10 years, that will change rapidly. It is changing rapidly. And I think unless we start regulating AI, as I said before, it will quickly become extremely harmful for the economy and extremely harmful for society. Because right now AI is limited to doing, as I said before, doing repetitive stuff. You know, or send this email for me, or check my email to make sure there's no grammatical errors, or take these automate these phone calls. So if someone's ordering food, you can automate it and take their order. Do this, this, and this. just repetitive stuff. Because AI right now is able to do highly complex tasks. Once AI is able to do highly complex tasks, we'll really see how bad it is for society. And yeah, let's continue the video.
Intelligence is power, and we're the species that exploited it the most. So much so that humanity broke the game of nature and took control. But the journey there wasn't straightforward. For most animals, intelligence costs too much energy to be worth it. Still, if we track intelligence in the tree of species over time, we can see lots of diverse forms of intelligence emerge. The earliest brains were in flatworms 500 million years ago, just a tiny cluster of neurons to handle basic body functions. It took hundreds of millions of years for species to diversify and become more complex. Life conquered new environments, gained new senses, and had to contend with fierce competition over resources. But in nature, all that matters is survival, and brains are expensive, so for almost all animals, a narrow intelligence fit for a narrow range of tasks was enough. In some environments, animals like birds, octopuses, and mammals evolved more complex neural structures. For them, it paid off to have more energy-consuming skills like advanced navigation and communication. Until 7 million years ago, the hominins emerged. We don't know why, but their brains grew faster than their relatives. Something was different about their intelligence. Very slowly, it turned from narrow to general, from a screwdriver to a multi-tool, able to think about diverse problems. 2 million years ago, Homo erectus saw the world differently from anyone before, as something to be understood and transformed. They controlled fire, invented tools, and created the first culture. We probably emerged from them around 250,000 years ago with an even larger and more complex brain. It enabled us to work together in large groups and to communicate complex thoughts. We used our intelligence to improve our lives, to ask how things worked and why things are the way they are. With each discovery, we asked more questions and pushed forward, preserving what we learned, outpacing what evolution could do with genes. Knowledge builds on knowledge. Progress was slow at first and then sped up exponentially. Agriculture, writing, medicine, astronomy, or philosophy exploded into the world. 200 years ago, science took off and made us even better at learning about the world and speeding up progress. 35 years ago, the internet age began. Today, we live in a world made to suit our needs, created by us, for us. This is incredibly new. We forget how hard it was to get here, how enormous the steps on the intelligence ladder were, and how long it took to climb them. But once we did, we became the most powerful animal in the world in a heartbeat. But we may be in the process of changing this. We're building machines that could be better at the very thing that gave us the power to conquer the planet. Humanity's final invention. Artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is software that performs mental tasks with a computer, code that uses silicon instead of neurons to solve problems. In the beginning, AI was very simple. Lines of code on paper, mere proofs of concept to demonstrate how machines could perform mental tasks. Only in the 1960s did we start seeing the first examples of what we would recognize as AI. A chatbot in 1964, a program to sort through molecules in 1965. Slow, specialized systems requiring experts to use them. Their intelligence was extremely narrow, built for a single task inside a controlled environment. The equivalent of flatworms 500 million years ago doing the minimum amount of mental work. Progress
On YouTube chat, K10 just said, imagine the AI turns on us and make us slaves and talk as a human race. I don't think, okay, let me be specific about my response. I don't think AI will enslave us so much. I think there will come a time where it controls us a lot. And apologies for pausing the video, but I think obviously there's a very blurry line between control and slavery, right? Because at some point, if you control someone to such a high, you know, length or such a high level, for all intents and purposes, even if they're technically free, you still control them, or you still is basically slavery when if you control them to extremely high level. So Whether AI enslaves us, I don't know. But to control us, I think the way humanity is going, the society is going, the world is going in general, I think AI will gain more and more control over us and our lives. You know, a lot of AI, few companies, a lot of AI already, handles a lot of our data, because a lot of young people especially, don't take data seriously enough. Every website they go to, they click accept cookies, accept cookies, accept cookies. No, don't click accept cookies for everything. Make sure you know what you're accepting before you accept it. Don't just click, oh, I accept cookies for everything. I accept cookies for everything. No. It's so important that young people realize that AI and cookies and their data is such an important thing to be able to handle properly and delicately, because that's stuff they use to control you fundamentally. That's why I could be talking to my friend right now. No, no, forget talking to my friend. I could be talking to my friend. Yada yada yada, blah 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 blah. Right? My phone has a microphone in it. My phone's picking up that microphone. Whatever apps I'm on or whatever, because I'm now talking near my phone, because of that, how do I say it? Because of that, that's how okay I can turn on my TV and watch a YouTube video. I was talking to my friend about, oh, I need to buy a new gaming PC. Now an advert for a gaming PC appears on my TV. Stuff like that doesn't just happen by chance, you know. That doesn't just happen by chance. Stuff by chance. So people don't realize how much data has been collected about them constantly, how much they're being tracked. You know, as invincible as you think you are, you know, companies know basically everything about you. The government knows everything about you. You know, people don't realize how serious that stuff is. Target the human race. Target as in directly hurt the human race. No, they might indirectly hurt us. You know, through their control over us, but directly target. But I think I do agree with your basic sentiment, Keaton. If that answers your question, let's continue with the video.
In AI research paused several times when researchers lost hope in the technology. But just like changing environments create new niches for life, the world around AI changed. Between 1950 and 2000, computers got 1 billion times faster, while programming became easier and widespread. In 1972, AI could navigate a room. In 1989, it could read handwritten numbers. But it remained a fancy tool, no match for humans. Until in 1997, an AI shocked the world by beating the world champion in chess, proving that we could build machines that could surpass us, but we calmed ourselves because a chessbot is quite stupid. Not a flatworm, but maybe a bee, only able to perform a specialized narrow task. But within this narrow task, it's so good that no human will ever again beat AI at chess. As computers continued to improve, AI became a powerful tool for more and more tasks. In 2004, it drove a robot on Mars. In 2011, it began recommending YouTube videos to you. But this was only possible because humans broke down problems into easy-to-digest chunks that computers could solve quickly. Until we taught AIs to teach themselves. Rise of the self-learning machines. This is not a technical video, so we're massively oversimplifying here. In a nutshell, the sheer
Peter just said they'll probably try to replace the humans and take the jobs to try to imitate what human does. We're not probably doing it, they are doing it. Companies are already using AI to replace lots of people. The only reason why they can't replace the majority of people right now is because AI can only do repetitive tasks right now. As we go into the future and AI gets more sophisticated and more advanced and more capable of learning, not just from the data we put into it, but from independently learning by itself, AI will take over a lot more human jobs as it's able to do more complex issues. Because right now, AIs can't be lawyers, they can't be a doctor, they can't be a teacher. Anything that requires a high level of education or a high level of thinking or high level of ability, AI can't do right now. And that's the only saving grace we have right now. But if we don't regulate AI and we don't limit its use or limit it to certain areas or industries, then it'll really harm us a lot.
power of supercomputers was combined with the almost endless data collected in the information age to make a new generation of AI. AI experts began drastically improving forms of AI software called neural networks, enormously huge networks of artificial neurons that start out being bad at their tasks. They then used machine learning, which is an umbrella term for many different training techniques and environments that allows algorithms to write their own code and improve themselves. The scary thing is that we don't exactly know how they do it and what happens inside them, just that it works and that what comes out the other end is a new type of AI, a capable black box of code. These new AIs could master complex skills extremely quickly with much less human help. They were still narrow intelligences, but a huge step up. In 2014, Facebook AI could identify faces with 97% accuracy. In 2016, an AI beat the best humans in the incredibly complex game of Go. In 2018, a self-learning AI learned chess in 4 hours just by playing against itself, and then defeated the best specialized chess bot. Since then, machine learning has been applied to reading, image processing, solving tests, and much more. Many of these AIs are already better than humans for whatever narrow task they were trained.
See, this is what I'm talking about. Right now, AI is limited to just like simple tasks or specific tasks. Like, oh, I can tell AI, oh, manage my emails, for example. Send emails to many people, or keep sending them emails every so often. Simple, repetitive tasks. That's what AI can do right now. If AI can break out of that structure, I can tell you we're finished.
But they still remained a simple tool. AI still didn't seem that big of a deal for most people. And then came the chatbot ChatGPT. The work that went into it is massive. It trained on nearly everything written on the internet to learn how to handle language, which it now does better than most people. It can summarize, translate, and help with some maths problems. It's incredibly more broad than any other system just a few years ago, not crushing any single benchmark, but all of them at once. Many large tech companies are spending billions to build powerful competitors. AI is already transforming customer service, banking, healthcare, marketing, copywriting, creative spaces, and more. AI-generated content has already taken hold of social media, YouTube, and news websites. Elections are expected to be inundated by propaganda and misinformation. No one is sure.
Yeah, that's another thing as well that people don't realize, that it isn't just gonna affect the job market. It's gonna affect like every aspect of life. Eddie just said, well, no, not Eddie, sorry, Keaton just said, why do you think a lot of jobs are unavailable? AI should be treated as good, and how can we help them? A lot of jobs are unavailable because the amount of the demand for jobs far exceeds the amount of jobs actually around. It's simple supply and demand, right? The supply of jobs is lower than demand for jobs. So the amount, the actual jobs available are less than the amount of jobs people want and need. So because of that,
or how much good or harm can come from adopting AI everywhere. Change is scary. There will be winners and losers. One of the biggest questions governments and corporations have now is how to manage the transition to an AI-boosted economy. All these potential gains or risks are just the result of today's AI. ChatGPT's intelligence is a major step up, but it remains narrow. While it can write a great essay in seconds, it doesn't understand what it's writing. But what if the AIs stopped being narrow? General AI. What makes humans different from current AI is our general intelligence. Humans can technically absorb any piece of knowledge and start working on any problem. We're great at many very different skills and tasks, from playing chess to writing or solving science puzzles. Not equally, of course. Some of us are experts in some fields and beginners in others, but we can technically do all of them. In the past, AI was narrow and able to become good at one skill, but was rather bad in all the others. Simply by building faster computers and pouring more money into AI training will get us new, more powerful generations of AI. But what if the next step for AI is to become a general intelligence like us, an AGI? If the AI improvement process continues as it has been, it's not unlikely that AGI could be better in most or even all skills that humans can do. We don't know how to build AGI, how it will work, or what it will be able to do. Since narrow AIs today are capable of mastering one mental task quickly, AGI might be able to do the same with all mental tasks. So even if it starts out stupid, an AGI might be able to become as smart and capable as a human. While this sounds like science fiction, most AI researchers think this will happen sometime this century, maybe already in a few years. Humanity is not ready for what will happen next. Not socially, not economically, not morally. Earlier, we defined intelligence as the ability to learn, reason, acquire knowledge and skills, and use them to solve problems, all things humans excel at. An AGI as intelligent as even an average human would already disrupt modern civilization because they're not bound by the same limitations as we are. Today's AIs like ChatGPT already think and solve the tasks they were made for at least 10 times faster than even very skilled humans. Maybe AGI will be slower, but it may also be faster, maybe much faster. And since AGIs are software, you could copy them endlessly as long as you have enough storage and run them in parallel. There are 8 million scientists in the world. Now imagine an AGI copied 1 million times and put to work. Imagine 1 million scientists working 24/7, thinking 10 times faster than humans without being distracted, only focused on the task they've been given. What if, suddenly, AGI could do all intelligence-based jobs in the world, from interpreting law to coding to creating animated YouTube videos, better, faster, and much cheaper than humans? Would whoever controls this AGI suddenly own the economy? And thinking bigger, human progress is our intelligence applied to problems. So what could 1 million AGIs achieve? Solve fundamental questions of science, like dark energy. Invent new technology that gives us limitless energy, fix climate change, cure aging and cancer. But then again, sadly, humans apply their intelligence not just for the benefit of all. What if the AGIs are tasked to guide drones or pull the triggers in war? Or to engineer a virus that only kills people with green eyes? Or to create the most profitable social media so addictive that people starve in front of their screens? The creation of AGI could reasonably be as big of an event as taming fire or electricity, and give whoever invents it equally as much power. But now let's go one step further. What if the potential of AGI doesn't stop here? Intelligence explosion. Intelligence and knowledge build and accelerate each other, but humans are limited by biology and evolution. Once we evolved the right hardware, our software outpaced evolution by orders of magnitudes, and within a heartbeat, we ruled this planet. But our software basically hasn't changed much since then, which is why we have obesity and destroy the climate for short-term gains. Since AGI is software on a computer, once it's smart enough to do AI research, the rate of AI progress should speed up a lot. And that results in better AI that's better at AI research without much human involvement. It may even be possible that AI could learn how to directly improve itself, in which case some experts fear this feedback loop could be incredibly fast. Maybe just months or years after the first self-improving AGI is switched on. Maybe it would actually take decades. We simply don't know. This is all speculative. But such an intelligence explosion might lead to a true super-intelligent entity. We don't know what such a being would look like, what its motives or goals would be, what would go on in its inner world. We could be as laughably stupid to a superintelligence as squirrels are to us, unable to even comprehend its way of thinking. This hypothetical scenario keeps many people up at night. Humanity is the only example we have of an animal becoming smarter than all others, and we have not been kind to what we perceive as less intelligent beings. AGI might be the last invention of humanity. It's possible that it could become the most intelligent and therefore most powerful being on Earth. A god in a box that could exercise its power to bring unimaginable wealth and happiness to humans while securing our future. Or it could subvert civilization and bring about our end, with humanity unable to come up with a way to stop it. We'll look at some of these potential futures in more videos, but for now, let's wrap up. The only thing we know for sure is that today, right now, many of the largest and richest companies in the world are racing to create ever more powerful AIs. Whatever our future is, we are running towards it. Who knows how long we have until we must confront our AI future. Luckily, you still have plenty of